First up today, we have David Thorpe, who will be discussing how we can all play a part in making cities more sustainable places to live. David is a valued consultant, speaker and author in the fields of carbon-free energy and sustainable development. He is also acting chair of the One Planet Council, which we've actually got another talk about later on, and the Sustainable Cities Collective. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much, Becca. Okay, welcome everybody. Like I say, I'm going to try, or we perhaps are going to try, to answer the question, what makes a sustainable city today? And this is a little bit about me, more, I do these books. That one, One Planet Life, is about One Planet development, and it's coming out in November, so in 1 month. And the one on the left is a fiction title on the same theme, set in Wales, which is coming out next month. So the answer to the question, what makes a sustainable city, is actually people, right? But it's people taking power for themselves, which is a shame. Perhaps it's why we're not that sustainable, is that there aren't many people in the tent today. I don't know. But it would be good if we could actually make them feel that they were part of something, and if they can realize that the people actually have more power than they think that they do have. And I'm not just talking about the Occupy movement or demonstrating or anything like that. While that may or may not be valuable, I don't think it makes a lasting effort. What makes a lasting effort is people doing things on the ground, wherever they happen to be living in their community, because they're providing infrastructure, they're creating change in their community, and that's what is much more likely to take root and be sustainable. So I think, everybody has it in themselves somewhere to make a difference. And what often, the gap is often that they actually don't feel confident enough, they don't feel connected, they don't feel they've got enough knowledge. But I mean, hey, we all have to start somewhere. At one point in my life, I would have been absolutely terrified to stand up on a stage in front of people, and I still am actually. But you get up and you do it anyway. People find themselves thrown into circumstances, and they achieve amazing things. And I think we can all do that. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at a lot of different things that might make a sustainable city. And this is just by way of inspiration. Just quickly run through all these things, and then we're going to see if any of them strike you in any particular way, something you might want to get involved with, if you find it inspiring at all. So the first topic is transport, because transport has a big environmental impact. It's one that's the most difficult to tackle, but as more and more people live in cities like Cardiff, then it's becoming more urgent to sort this one out. That just shows you the space required to have 60 people in cars. Creates lots of congestion, lots of air pollution, unhealthy, horrible. But if you put them all in a bus, it takes a lot less space. If they're on bikes, even better, the same amount of space, but they'll get healthy, and they produce endorphins, and it makes them happy when they get to work as well. So these are 3 pictures which show examples of people taking action to make their cities more walkable and more cyclable. This is a developer who's actually selling their development on the basis of the fact that you can cycle to it. It's actually considered to be a plus in that case. This is a city in France where people just put up the signs themselves saying, look, hey, it's quicker to get there by cycle than it is actually by car, And this is somewhere in India where people just got fed up because there was no space for them to walk on the roads, and they just decided to reclaim and have a march. We want to make our streets more appropriate for walkers and for cyclists. So planners, some of this is for planners, some of this is for ordinary people. But planners need to make cities so that people live near where everything is. They live near the school, they live near the hospital, they live near their workplace and so on, and the shops. And part of this is about not necessarily having a city centre, but having hubs where you can go and get all the stuff you need. I mean, Cardiff doesn't do this too badly. You've got Cardiff Bay, which is in a sense another hub, apart from the city centre itself. Now, the fourth point there, we all know the difficulty of that. I wanted to come here on public transport. I found it impossible. There weren't enough trains at the right time, and they don't connect to the buses. So that is a thing that should be sorted out, but unfortunately, Cardiff government is cutting the buses. But as the grid is decarbonised, becomes more and more renewable energy on it, then it makes more sense to drive an electric vehicle. It becomes more sustainable. And so one other thing to create a demand for electric vehicles is to provide more and more electric hubs for charging electric vehicles. And to penalise, this picture here, for instance, shows a parking meter where you're penalised, you pay more to park in the city if your vehicle is more polluting. That's in Madrid. Why not put that everywhere? This is a car sharing scheme here. So it's kind of like a bike sharing scheme like Boris Bikes in London. We can have bike sharing schemes as well, but that one uses electric cars. And that's an electric trolley bus. So this is how far you can get on the same amount of carbon, right? Most polluting is a scooter, the passenger car. This is all assuming that these things are full, by the way, of course. So walking and cycling is more environmentally sound. And I hate pictures which show cyclists dressed in lycra, you know, as if they're the only people, that's the only way you can get on your bike. Biking is for everybody, and it should be normalised, you know, like it is in Holland, for instance, or in Belgium. And this is what a proper cycle lane looks like. We should have those in Cardiff. And this is a really right-on company, and they do their deliveries by bike. Brilliant. So next topic, smart cities. Everybody thinks smart cities is to do with wiring everything up and the Internet of Things and all that stuff. But really, a smart city is down to the wisdom of the people living there, isn't it? So if you've got smart people, and everybody's smart and everybody knows something about where they are, they need to be consulted, they need to be involved, they need to think as well that they can share information, they can share things, they can share goods, they can share services, they can do a one-to-one sharing thing, and this is called the collaborative economy. Now this is a slide from California, a friend of mine called Jeremiah Aoyang. He's actively promoting this all over the world. There's lots and lots of companies in all sectors of life are using sort of mobile phones with apps to do sharing, whether it's sharing childcare, whether it's sharing food, sharing cooking facilities, sharing bicycles, whatever you can think of, there are people who are sharing it. You think of Airbnb, for instance, that's one sharing thing. Uber taxis is another sort of, disruptive practice. That's taxis in London went on strike, protesting about it this week, weren't they? So these are all examples of how people are collaborating directly with each other to do the things that they need to keep jobs and the economy ticking over. So talking about the economy, local currencies, we don't have one. Do we have one of those in? Has anybody ever tried to make one in Cardiff? They have. What happened to it?
I don't think there was enough uptake. I think they called it, I think it's TAFs. It's
Right.
still going on, but a very small group of people that are really passionate about it. It hasn't gone anything like that.
That's often the case. That's often the case, unfortunately. But this one in Bristol, I don't know if you've heard about the Bristol one, the Bristol pound is so phenomenally successful. You can actually get virtually everything in Bristol pounds. And it works primarily because it's actually it's not notes, or it can be notes, but it's actually a card. It's electronic, so it's just part of what people do. And they can swipe something, and they have a separate bank account, and the money comes out. It's one-to-one between normal pound, green pound, and it works fantastic. So it's about local sourcing, whether or not you're using local currency or not. Favourable purchasing, to purchase from people who you think are right on, ethically sound, and so on. Because, you know, if you send money out of your local economy, it goes somewhere else. Or it goes to London, or it goes to New York, or it goes to Tokyo, or it goes to Beijing. What that is all about, if everybody's doing that all over the world, that is concentrating wealth. It's concentrating power in the hands of a few people. But one of the biggest sources of power we've got is the power in our pocket, power of how we spend money. We can choose to spend money in places that it makes sense to spend that money because we want to support that thing happening. So in terms of spending locally, this is an American example, but the pie chart is more or less the same. If you buy from a chain, for instance, $57 out of every 100 will leave the community. And, you know, maybe they've got a few jobs in the shop locally or something like that, but the rest of the money goes, it never comes back. Whereas if you shop locally, only 32% leaves in form of taxes and stuff like that. And there's even worse, is if you buy on the internet, because then it all goes. And if you spend it locally, there's a multiplier effect, because that person you gave the money to will spend it locally as well, and the value of that pound becomes much greater. It's multiplied by at least 3.5 times. Next topic is to do with future-proofing infrastructure, which is a huge topic, and there's lots and lots of different aspects to it. But one of them is we've got to refurbish all of our buildings, not just our homes, so that they save a lot of energy. And I'm a believer in the passive house standard. It's objective. You can prove whether or not it's working and saving energy down 15 watts per square meter that's the statistic, but 15 watts per square meter of energy use per square meter of the building skin. That's what that means. And so you can actually measure whether or not you've met that standard. And it's not really much more expensive than conventional refurbishment, but you will save a lot of money over the lifetime of the building. LED lighting, that's LED street lighting. Why shouldn't it should all be LED lighting? There's absolutely no reason. It's far, far more effective. It's one of the best investments you can make is to switch all your light bulbs to LED lighting. Wireless energy management, why? Because first of all energy needs to be measured, because then we can control it, then we can bring it down. Why wireless? Because you don't have to put the cables in, the infrastructure in, which itself has a carbon footprint. So now you can put little meters on everything, send it wirelessly. The council can do this and find out remotely exactly how much energy they're using, where it's being wasted, and cut it down. Dense development is much better than sprawl. We don't want sprawl taking up agricultural land, so dense development is also more energy efficient because you're keeping heat within a certain area, or cool as well, because you can have strategies for dealing with that, and making areas more climate resilient. So this is a dense development. It's actually social housing. It's somewhere in the Midlands, and these are passive house buildings. They are made with hempcrete. Hempcrete is a material that locks up atmospheric carbon in the structure of the building, so it's about as ecologically sound as you can get. And notice also the layout. It's like a village green type layout, so that all the people in the houses can keep an eye on the kids playing there. But here in Wales, we've got lots of examples of builders developing eco houses. This is one down in Pembrokeshire, a guy called Glenn Peters, T-Solar. He claims he generates more electricity than he uses in the building. The timber is sourced in Wales, it's Welsh larch. The windows are made in Wales, passive house standard windows. So this is the kind of thing that we could be doing in Wales. And climate resilience, of course, we get lots of rain, flooding, that kind of thing. We need to make streets places where water can go safely when there's too much of it. And actually also, in the bottom picture on the left, make a nice place to be, a place for nature. So bring this on to energy. Well, energy has lots of different aspects, as you know, but solar, for cities in particular, solar energy is appropriate. Bristol Council is leasing out all of the roofs of the properties it owns, so that developers can put PV panels on and the council makes money out of it. There are other councils around the country who are leasing out their own land, their own roofs, and so on, just so people can put panels on and make money, and the council makes money, cut the rates. Heat pumps are very interesting. This is a picture of the Menai Straits in Ysmon, and this is a National Trust property which has the only water source heat pump in Wales at the moment, but it takes heat from the water, and there's no reason why any city or any town or any location that's by a water source, whether it's a river or the coast, cannot use it to take energy from it. We can do it in Cardiff. There's one on the Thames, for instance, and it takes what a heat pump does. Every unit of energy going in, you get 3 units out in the form of heat. Anaerobic digestion, which takes organic waste and turns it into gas, the kind of gas you can put in the mains, but also creates fertilizer. It really closes the loop, creates jobs as well. And around here, of course, you can have tidal lagoons. They're hopefully going to build one in Swansea. It's going through planning at the moment. And the other thing you can do in cities is solar water heating as well. District heating schemes as well in cities. So this one's in Sheffield, being put in as the heat main going in, and from a combined heat and power, which is 95% efficient, as opposed to a normal power station, which is only 35% efficient. Reclaim all the heat, take it around the main, put it into the buildings. Put it all together, this is what you get. So lots of different things going on, all works together, different sources of heat, different sources of sinks and so on. So if one thing fails, it doesn't matter, you've got something else. Part of the value of community energy, locally owned energy as well, is that you haven't got distribution losses in the grid. So that's another reason why it's more efficient. And if it's locally owned, community owned, then of course the community benefits from the sale of the electricity or the heat. So food, that's what we're doing here. There's people in the next door doing cooking, and probably more people next door watching people cook than there are in here. I never quite understood why anybody wants to watch people cook, especially if they're not going to eat the food afterwards, but what do I know? But it's fun growing food. Dan, you know it's fun growing food. It's great fun growing food. And I try to grow a lot of food, but in cities it's not always easy, but there's lots of places where you can do it. And some cities make available, some towns make available little plots of land owned by the council, aren't used for anything else. You can just plant stuff and grow it. Edible landscaping, that's called, and it's like Todmorden in Yorkshire is a village that's absolutely famous for that. And you can just walk around and pick strawberries and whatever happens to be in season. Allotments, obviously, farmers markets, community gardens, community supported agriculture is a good one, because that is a way, it's kind of subscription model whereby people take out a subscription with a deal with a farmer nearby who grows stuff. So he's got a continual money coming in. It's not seasonal like it usually is, so he can plan in advance. He knows exactly what he's going to sell, and you, the consumer, know where it's coming from. And indoor growing. In future, much more food will be grown indoors in cities. Why? Because it's very, very sustainable, because you haven't got the food miles flying around the world, and there's no nitrate pollution. You can recycle the water. There's no need for pesticides, closed environment. You can either use natural lighting or you can use LEDs. And believe me, I wasn't convinced, but I went to a conference a couple of weeks ago and I was blown away by it. One of the things I found out about was aquaponics, right? Fantastic. You grow stuff and you can grow fish, and it's a closed system. The waste from the fish feeds the plants. The plants clean the water, goes back into the fish. Fantastic. Any size. You can have a little domestic unit in your house. So this is Swansea, Vetch Veg. Have you heard of Vetch Veg in Swansea? Swansea's very proud of Vetch Veg, community growing scheme. That's the site. That's what it used to look like in the middle of a housing estate, and that's what it looked like earlier this year. So it's fantastic transformation. It's really brought the community together, and that's one of the values of community growing in cities. It really revitalises the community, brings people together, and they feel good, and they know where the food's coming from as well. There is a thing in Cardiff. Does anybody know much about it? Is it any good?
They're only just starting up, but
Yeah.
they're building really good networks with lots of the things you mentioned, especially community growth projects. They've actually just started one up myself. So, yeah,
Okay. So it might work, yeah. But you know, some places lease out their roofs so that they become growing on roofs. There'll be a lot more of that going on. Even greenhouses on the roof, any flat roofs. In Basel in Switzerland, they've actually got aquaponics greenhouses on the roofs, and they reckon they can feed 13% of the food requirements of the city from all the flat roofs that there are in the city. And this is from New York, where doctors prescribe to people who have got diabetes or they're overweight or some other health problem. They give them this like voucher which they can then take to a farmer's market and get healthy food. That's another win-win. I like win-wins. So talking about health, cities can make you very ill. And this is a list of all the hazards, things that doctors go to, people go to doctors for, that the doctors have figured out is due to their environment where they're living in the city. So, you know, the fact that cities make people ill is another part of the equation, of the argument, if you like, for sustainable cities. So people say, the council might say, look, we can't afford to do this, we can't afford to do that. But if you factor in the health costs, into part of the external costs into that equation, it makes economic sense as well as human sense as well. And so Brighton is another one planet city. It is doing this, and this is a scorecard, so it's monitoring the results of this policy. So you can see how successful they are. So water, we can do roof water collection for rainwater, but only if you don't use electricity for pumps and things like that. Otherwise, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense in Wales because we get a lot of rain anyway. But these things at the bottom, by the way, does anybody know what that is? What they are? Can you see them? They're basically wetlands, but they treat sewage. They're called wet systems, actually. They ecological treatment of sewage. So the one on the right treats sewage from factory that makes cider. And you imagine the amount of effluent that comes out of there. And it's been working for 15 years. And it's so cheap, it provides a biodiverse environment for nature, and it cleans the water fantastically. So a really good alternative. Back to people again. So part of the sustainability is tolerance, it's inclusivity, it's bringing everybody into the equation, including children, and working and development at a human scale as well. So not sort of big monolithic blocks and stuff like that. People being consulted about what they do. One of my favourite examples is this one on the top right. That is in Germany. It's in Freiburg. It's called Vauban. It's a district. It's basically a really good example, not only of sustainability and all the things we've been talking about, but also the way it happened was it was a disused military area, and it became squatted, like they do this kind of thing in Germany. And lots of people squatted it, and then the developers wanted to move in and do something, but the people said, no, we don't want to do that. We want to talk to you, and we want to make this a beacon of sustainability. So they said, okay, and they did, and they talked about it, and it's now one of the most sustainable districts in a city in the whole world, in my opinion. Fantastic. Ultimately, it's about, are people happy living in a city? You know, a sustainable city should be happy. And that's about livability. And it's about streets that people like to be in. They can meet, they can talk, they can do the things they want to do. They don't have stress getting from A to B. Even a busy street like this one, got traffic coming down it, they've made a space at the side of the street where the pavement is, where people can meet, and it's kind of barricaded off, it's been made green and stuff like that. It's amazing what you can do with what's there already without having to knock it down and start again, sort of thing. And I actually quite like Cardiff Bay. You know, I think Cardiff Bay is a good example of this. It's how people come. It's a very nice place to be. You walk around and do everything you want. Yeah, you know all this stuff about looping and recycling and everything like that. So the reason why Vauban worked, and the reason why what Steph's going to talk about in a minute, and Dan, one planet development in Wales, is because you've got a grassroots movement met with sympathy from the top. Now that's really, really important for sustainability. You've got to find people up there who listen to you, and they're just people like you and me. You can go and talk to them, find out what they need, what boxes they need to tick on their agenda and stuff, and maybe you'll find some receptivity. And when that happens, you can achieve absolutely everything, and it will have a lasting effect. So this guy here, everybody know who he is? George Ferguson. Who's he?
Directly elected mayor of Bristol.
That's right.
Very, very wealthy, but also very community oriented.
Yeah, he's fantastic. It's funny how mayors do tend to be wealthy, but successful ones like Mayor Bloomberg, for instance. But Mayor Bloomberg of New York, ex-Mayor Bloomberg, you know, he's one of the most. He's a real prophet of sustainability. He's done so much, and we can blame him and say he's got lots of money, but you know he does a lot with it. And I think George's heart is in the right place because his salary is paid in Bristol pounds. All of his salary is in Bristol pounds, so he's got to spend it within the local economy, and that's really saying something. And he's got a bike and he likes to cycle about. So we've got the Future Generations Bill. These pictures are from the launch of the Future Generations Bill in Wales, and we hope that it's going to make a difference and we can work with the government. We're quite lucky, I think, to have this going through the system. Everybody needs to say what they want out of it for it to work. So if you haven't done already, take part of the big conversation and let them know. And we've got to find the right ways of monitoring it afterwards to make sure that when they say something sustainable, then it really is. And I think just to finally leave you with some pictures of that's Vauban, both of those pictured at the top. But it's about the hinterlands, because this is a country fair in a city. The hinterlands around the city are just as important as the city, because in the old days, cities like Paris fed themselves from the hinterlands, the area around. So, and all the sewage got taken out at night, of course, feed the soil, in the daytime they come back with some food. And maybe we can somehow begin to get back to that kind of pattern, even though we're living in a world where by 2050 there'll be close on 10 billion people, 70 to 80% of them will live in cities. It's quite a sobering thought. So that's the idea. Any questions?
Any questions?
Well, more just a comment really, but for me, I've been living in Vancouver, Canada for 3 years. Just returned to Canada.
Oh, that's a nice place, yeah.
Yeah, and for me it was just a wake-up call returning out. Vancouver wants to be the greenest city by 2020, basically. It is very sustainable. All the transport is around, all the majority of it is around electric cables, and there's like car sharing, and there's a lot of inner city gardening and allotments and things. And then returning here, it was almost impossible not to have a car. I lived in Vancouver for 3 years without a car, very comfortably, getting everywhere in public transport. Really eye-opening,
Yeah.
Not only that, there's a great example of a place called Thorpe Island, which is a small coastal island on Vancouver. And they pretty much have their own little market there where everything is grown on this small island, very small place. People are growing all different sorts of meat, food, and also making their own clothes, making their own candles, everything down to that. They all come together in the market on Saturday, and people basically exchange, and everything is produced on the island. And for me, it was just a comment on what you were speaking about, basically.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
How it can actually be achieved as well. It's not just some sort of idealistic thing. It's very
Yeah. It's taken about 50 years, hasn't it? Because the environment movement, Greenpeace began in that part of the world.
Yeah.
So in the 60s, early 70s. And that's how long it's taken. So it's the same in Germany with Vauban. That's how long it's taken. But let's start somewhere.
I suppose the challenge for a lot is those external costs that you say in the long term will be of benefit because the healthcare bill will come down. It's how you get councils or the government organisations to take into account full cost when they're looking at, okay, we've got to invest in solar, we've got to invest in the central heating systems or the recycling systems. Just try to get those you put up creative accounting methods.
I did, and that's what I meant by it.
To take account
I didn't mean cooking the books.
No, but what is the full cost?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a good comments that I have about it. I think everything that you mentioned is fantastic, and it's great that there are lots of people working on it. And it was really interesting that you started off and talking about power, and then saying, a protest, and that doesn't make a lasting difference. But to me, it's the protest in the sense of the point where people do things like take over lakes in India,
Oh, yeah.
and all of that. It does two things. One is it sets a boundary and pushes that boundary as being a priority to people, assuming that it is actually genuine protest and not just a consulting company inventing protest that's happened. That's sometimes fictionalised community development or another. But assuming it is it's a space for people to talk, and it's a space for people to push that boundary, and I think that's the really big thing, and that actually a lot of the things about our cities now is that actually we're fairly atomised, and weirdly, although we're all living together really closely, the amount of space there is for people to actually come together mutually and do things and talk even. It's smaller and smaller and smaller. One of the things that I find as a test is whether there is somewhere indoors where you can eat a sandwich, you bring somewhere in the city where you can sit in a public place that's maybe on a day when it's raining
Yes.
and eat a sandwich.
Public space.
And actually that, and trying to do that in certain places,
Yes.
libraries used to be really good places to do it, but actually
Yeah.
it's really rare.
Yeah.
And so but we need spaces where we're going to talk. We
Yeah.
need spaces to discuss, to organise.
Yes.
So yeah, democracy seems to be a big part of it.
Yes.
It's not really in the big corporate interests for us to do that.
No, I mean the corporatisation of public space has been a big trend in the last 34 years. So we do have to reclaim public space. You're absolutely right. But I mean, I know the council was a bit worried before I was going to give my talk about power, that I was going to be advocating a revolution or something, and everybody get me on the streets. So I had to sort of tone that bit down. But,
No, it's not, tone it down.
I mean, I hear what you're saying totally, and I think it is. I mean, Boban was like that. It was a squatted area, you know, and then it became official. The same with Christiania in Copenhagen. The reason why Copenhagen tops every world list of a sustainable city is because of Christiania, which is a squatted area for years and years and years. It's full of hippies and everybody worked them all off. But yeah, look at it now.
Vancouver, the farmers markets were legal in Vancouver.
Yeah.
They started doing them anyway.
Yes.
And then, so they then changed the city ordinance to say, oh, okay, we can have farmers markets.
Yeah.
And they're still having, but they're still having to push back the laws to make it legal to grow vegetables in massive urban spaces. And there are enormous spaces in front of behind houses, and yet it's illegal to grow things. They're market garden sized. You can grow so much within the city, and yet it's illegal to do it themselves. So there's loads of pushing that we need to do.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. What?